It is really, really cool to be here. That was a great introduction. Thank you. In many ways, I'm not nearly as cool as that made me sound. In other ways, I'm even cooler than that. And the reason I'm even cooler than that is kind of the subject of what I wanted to share with you tonight. And that is, I'm even cooler than that for the same reason that you're even cooler than that. And that is that we have this identity as being a beloved child of God, which is the coolest identity any of us could have. And so I want to share with you a little bit about identity. I want to do it within the context of how God has worked in my life and then also worked in the lives of Bandwidth and Sovereign's Capital. And hopefully he'll speak through me and you'll get a sense for some of the things that he's done well, some of the mistakes we've made along the way. And hopefully some aspect of what I'll share with you tonight will help encourage you in a direction where you can be out there looking to honor God in the marketplace, or at least try to avoid some of the mistakes that I made along the way. So quick background, I'm from Baltimore, Maryland. Went to school at the University of Delaware. I found my first love while at the University of Delaware, and it was understanding that I could make a t-shirt for $5 and sell it for 10. And I could do that simple math. And I just really enjoyed being an entrepreneur and getting out there and making it happen. Ended up, before I left school, I had sales teams at more than 50 schools up and down the East Coast. But then I had some major copyright problems, and I got some big trouble. And my dad said, that's mistake number one. You'll lose count of the mistakes over time. My dad said, listen, pal, you can plead naivete when you're 20, but you need to get a real job when you're 21. And I was about to turn 21. So wanted to get a real job. I looked for some good cultural influences that would help me make a decision as to what to do next in my life. And I had just seen the movie Wall Street with Michael Douglas, Charlie Sheen. And I'm like, you know what? I want to be Bud Fox. I want to be the guy with the 2 phones and the apartment with the exposed brick wall, and Daryl Hannah's my girlfriend, and I'm going to go up there. And that's mistake number 2. Whenever you want to have Charlie Sheen as your role model, something is very, very wrong. So I went up to New York, and I was searching for happiness, and I thought that I'd find success and I'd find glory. And I did not know the Lord at the time. And I tried to find happiness in all the stereotypical ways that somebody does in Wall Street. And I did a lot of dating. I spent a lot of time trying to make a career that would be about myself and financial gain. And I found some level of success, maybe some level of exhilaration in both of those things. And yet increasingly, I felt incredibly empty. From everybody else's perspective, things were going incredibly well. You know, the old Frank Sinatra song, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. And the world had thought I was making it, and yet I was feeling further and further lost. I ended up deciding to start a company in the institutional derivatives world, moved to North Carolina, a much longer story, moved down with my bride, and when we moved down to North Carolina, we investigated this cultural Christian faith that we both had, but didn't know what it meant. So we walked into a church one day. It was one of those born-again churches. We couldn't leave early, though we wanted to, because we had come late, and we knew that'd be bad. So we stuck through it. And I thought, gosh, you know, this guy, he's confident, articulate, and intelligent. He's standing from the podium. He seems to think that the Bible is actually true. And I had no place in my brain where I could process that, how you could actually think that the Bible is true. But I thought to myself, gosh, I could get up to heaven, and St. Peter's there for the entrance interview. He's like, okay, Kaestner, you read like 1,000 books on the planet, and you never cracked the cover of the best-selling book of all time. How can I let you in? I thought, it can't go down like that. So I got the Bible, and you are at Biola, right? You probably know how many pages are in the Bible. I didn't, but I saw the end part, which is the New Testament, of course, and I said, gosh, that reminds me of the Cliff Notes. And I got through prep school by reading the Cliff Notes of all the classics. I'm like, I can do that. And another much longer story, but it was through that the Holy Spirit led me to the Lord, and I came to understand how much God loves me, and it changed everything. I was 28. I started a business with a business partner. I sold a prior business I was in. I started a business with a business partner in 2000, and he was a lifelong believer. I was a very, very new believer, but we wanted to be really intentional about our corporate culture. And he had proposed, of course, with something that makes all the sense in the world, which is we can't artificially contrive our culture Our culture needs to mirror who we want to be as individuals and who we are as individuals. And so for us, it's going to be faith first, then family, then work, and then finally, lastly, fitness. And I'm going to take them in reverse order. We're going to unpack them just a little bit. Number 4 is fitness. My business partner and best friend, David Morgan, is a world-class endurance athlete. I am a neighborhood class endurance athlete. And I live in a very small neighborhood, but I like to work out too. And so we said, if we're going to have a culture, if we're going to have bandwidth and it's then separated bandwidth and Republic Wireless, if we're going to have this culture, we want other people to be able to work out as well. So today, between the two companies, we have just around 600 employees, and about 2/3 of them work out every day. And we have the champion ice hockey team in Raleigh, North Carolina. We've got a great basketball team. We've got an ultimate frisbee team. We entered a team into the Race Across America endurance cycling race and won it. We came in second in the Trans-Rockies mountain bike race. We like to compete and win, and we like to do it in fitness. It's become very much a part of our culture. Number 3 for us is work. And to take another line from an 80s movie, Chariots of Fire, when we work, we feel God's pleasure. We really feel like it's what God designed us to do. And we get out there and we work hard, we do play hard, but we really relish the times that we get to create and innovate and do it with an incredible team of people who are remarkably gifted. And thinking of new technologies, we invented a technology. Some members of our team invented technology that allows for a phone call to go over Wi-Fi and the cell phone backhaul and flip back and forth. So that's a company called Republic Wireless. We're able to develop some technologies that have us powering all of Google Voice. So if you have ever had a Google Voice number, that's through us. And we power a lot of the over-the-top providers that are out there. So a Vonage or a Skype or Lyft and a lot of those people. And we love doing it. We really love doing it. Work, however, is not nearly as important to us as our families. I have 3 kids. David has 6. And remember, again, neighborhood class, world class. And we have lots and lots of young employees. And we believed at the time that we wanted to be at home for dinner time and bath time and story time and bedtime. We never wanted to miss that. Now, on occasion, of course, we do. Sometimes we're on the road, but we want to get about 80 to 90% of them. And really, I'm probably somewhere in the low 90s. It's very, very important. So we kick all of our employees out of the office at 6 o'clock to be home, to be with their families. But because we want to compete and win, we get back in at 8:30 and we work until the day's done. And sometimes that's 12 o'clock, sometimes it's 1 o'clock. There aren't any free passes in telecom, but they don't come at the expense of what we do with our family. And one night in which we do not work late is Wednesday nights. Wednesday night is a time for me to take Kimberly out and tell her that indeed she is more important to me than my work. The most important thing, of course, for us is faith. We don't have fish on our business cards, and we don't have healing ceremonies on Tuesdays. We have them on Wednesdays. We don't have healing ceremonies. Although we do believe in spiritual gifts, we don't do that. But what we do is to love on our employees and always try to be ready to share the reason for the hope we have. It's really important for us. It's the number one. It's impossible to spend any meaningful time with David and I and not know what makes us tick. We do that with our employees when they come in and they interview and they get started. We do an orientation breakfast. Then we talk about it at the Christmas party. We talk about it in front of all the families at the employee picnic that happens in the summertime. We give God the credit for the success that he's done through Bandwidth. And we want to make sure that everybody knows it. We want to do it with gentleness and respect. We also want to have a workforce that is diverse. We want to hire the best person for the job, regardless of faith background or social persuasion. And we see that as a great opportunity for us to love on our employees. Really important. A couple of mistakes we made along the way. Number one, early on at Bandwidth, we'd have small groups. We'd have Bible study in the morning. And very quickly, it became an us versus them type of thing. People who didn't come to the Bible studies felt that they were on the outside looking in. We wanted to be much more inclusive than that. In our application, that didn't work well. I've seen some companies where it does work well. It didn't work well for us. Second thing, and shame on me for this, it took me about 8 years to feel comfortable in praying with non-believing employees. I knew that all of my employees knew what made me tick, what made David tick, but I didn't want to be too over the top about it. But there was one day when a guy came into my office, talked about his dad and the health problems he was having. And I said, James, do you mind if I pray for you? And he said he didn't mind at all. And so I prayed for him. And he took it for what it was intended to be, me loving him as well as I possibly could and the best I knew. Now, he didn't pray the sinner's prayer as he walked out of the office, but God did use that. And another thing that God used in his life and others' lives was chaplaincy. It took me about the same amount of time before I even heard that there was such a thing as corporate chaplains. And we found this great organization called Corporate Chaplains of America that lent us a chaplain that would come in every Friday and walk around and love on our employees. And he grew with us and got more and more and more involved. Early on, one of our general managers had a major problem with the fact that we had a corporate chaplain. And I cited all these professional sports teams that had chaplains. They wanted to compete and win. They knew that taking care of the spiritual welfare of their employees meant that they should have a chaplain, even among secular owners of sports teams. But he said, no, that's too much. It's too over the top. We thought about it. We prayed about it. And we decided to go through with it anyway. Interestingly, a couple of years after we hired Jeff, our first corporate chaplain, that guy, the general manager, came to us and said, Jeff's maxed out. We need another one. It was really awesome. It was a huge win. One of the people on his team had died during the work day. And the way that Jeff had loved on that employee's family and the whole group and this very, mushrooming business, he saw the value of it. And that was a big key. So encouragements for you, and you hear this a lot. Again, it is an element of preaching to the choir here. In my experience, it has never been a mistake to ask somebody if you can pray for them, whether they share your faith background or not. They take it for you loving on them. I've never had a problem when I talk about what God has done in my life. I run into problems when I suggest how they might think about faith. You probably have as well. But in my instance, in sharing my faith with Google executives on a ski lift, when I talk about how God has worked in my life, that's never been thought of as being offensive. And I hope to encourage you and commission you in that regard. Okay, so I want to pick up on this concept of identity, and building into that, I want to introduce the concept of how important it is that we talk about why we do what we do. So there's some great secular business research through guys like Simon Sinek and Clayton Christensen and Jim Collins that talk about how important it is we talk about why we do what we do. So if you haven't seen the Simon Sinek TED.com video, I highly recommend it. It's awesome. He talks about how important it is for us as leaders, not necessarily just to talk about what we do or how we do it, but why we do it. And he actually goes through the physiology of the brain and talks about how compelling it can be when a leader talks about why they do what they do. Too oftentimes, Christ followers don't talk about that. They don't share why they do, and as a result of that, they are put at a disadvantage. John Mackey can tell you about wanting to reinvent the supply chain for food with a passion that is winsome. Steve Jobs could do it, about bringing form and function to technology. The Wright brothers could do it. But too oftentimes, we as Christ followers don't want to talk about why we do what we do at the risk of sounding offensive or exclusive or ignorant or naive, things that are awful things to be in Northern California or Southern California. And yet, when we don't talk about what God has done in our life and why we do what we do, we put ourselves at a disadvantage because the other people can talk about why they do what they do. I believe that we have a remarkable advantage as Christ followers, especially when you can find a partner that's equally yoked with you. There are some very, very hard times at Bandwidth. We went 0 for 40 in venture raises. The ability that David and I had to pray for each other, to go through the valley of the shadow of death with a God who loved us, gave us an advantage. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Pragmatically, I can tell you that if we were not Christ followers, and this is not a prosperity gospel, but if we were not Christ followers, we would not have gotten through the very challenging early days of Bandwidth. And so I believe that we do have an advantage. And I believe that part of that advantage can be manifest when we talk about why we do what we do to our employees in a way that's done with gentleness and respect. That means it's done through relationship. It means that we value them. We do all sorts of different things to love on them. We create meaningful work for them to do. We love on them by creating incredible benefits packages. We have a $10,000 bonus if you go through an adoption. Lots of different ways we try to love on our employees. But one of them, of course, is that we need to be able to talk about why we do what we do. Okay, so that also, when we talk about why we do what we do at Biola, ostensibly, it means, of course, we do what we do for the glory of God, right? But therein lies the rub, or at least for me. So I love Proverbs, right? Because if I'm doing a Bible study and I need to have some wisdom, I always know which proverb I need to be in, because as you all know, there are 31 proverbs. So remember, I'm the guy who can just barely do the math between 10 minus 5. I need the 31 proverbs so I know where I am. On the 16th of the month and the 21st of the month, this is the lesson I'll be hearing. All a man's ways seem pure to him, seem right to him, but the motives are weighed by the Lord. I'll tell you that what I do is for the glory of God. That is my aim. When I start off my days, as I try to every day in Scripture, I start off really, really well. But all too often, maybe sometimes at 9 in the morning, sometimes at 11, sometimes I'll make it to 4, but I'm looking for the approval of my peers, or I'm looking for financial success, or I'm looking for how the world would ascribe success and wealth and all those different things. And so I want to unpack that a little bit more with you and talk about how I've seen that impact a lot of different entrepreneurs, but really also, of course, through my life. So we have this investment fund now. We had this belief, of course, that transformation happens in the marketplace. We'd seen it happening through Bandwidth. We saw people coming to faith, and we saw ability to love on our community in a way that pointed to something greater. So we thought that there would be an opportunity to do that beyond Bandwidth. We started up a venture fund. It's called Sovereign's Capital that invests in faith-driven entrepreneurs in Southeast Asia and the United States. Along with this premise that when we do our work really well, and this is really important, you know this, again, preaching to the choir, but Francis Schaeffer says it really, really well. He says, in effect, it's the degree to which we do our work well, which is the degree that we have an opportunity to witness and be heard. So at Sovereign's Capital, we look to invest in the very best faith-driven businesses in a couple of different industries we know very well in Southeast Asia and America. And we've now made 35 investments. And the 35 investments are run by incredible men and women. They're serious about their faith. They're intentional about incorporating God into the marketplace. They want to compete and win. And yet all 35 of them have a problem. And it's actually the same problem I had. It may be the same problem you have. Their lives are characterized by high levels of anxiety. And I have this theory and this thesis over the last couple of years looking through this. I did not expect to see this at all. But my thesis is that Christ-following entrepreneurs and church planners, interestingly an entrepreneurial subset, tend to have higher levels of anxiety than other Christ followers across different verticals. And I was wondering, why is that? And I've come to understand that it comes down to this concept and question of identity. And I think that we're all all of us could fall prey to it. So I think it's worth unpacking a little bit. So again, we're essentially believing that we are Christ followers, that though we were deserving of death, we have this God who loves us so much, He gave us this incredible gift. And yet we get out there every day and we're in the marketplace, and the world will tell us, the world will say in Silicon Valley or in Southern California, that we are really the head of an entrepreneurial firm that's growing at 20% month over month. And that's where our worth comes from. Or really, our identity really is the entrepreneur that just closed a $20 million fund from Founders Fund, or U.S. Venture Partners, or Battery, or Sequoia. Or really, our worth is, as we share about this at a cocktail party or on a lacrosse or soccer sideline, that we just closed Google as an account. And we hear these things, and our identity ends up getting wrapped up in being this entrepreneur that's really successful. And I would submit to you that the danger is much, much worse to the degree that you're interestingly successful. We want to be successful because it's the degree that we have an opportunity to witness and be heard. And yet, the more successful we are, the more the world validates us as we're on a soccer sideline or at an MBA school or an undergraduate class, that we actually really matter. Wow, that's really cool that you closed Google as an account. And we hear this lie from the world, and it becomes this part of our identity. And it can be really, really toxic and corrosive. And that's something I think that we all need to really watch out for. And I found that in my case. In addition to that, and this kind of misplaced identity, a lot of times we'll have this workspace righteousness without even really knowing it. If we were, any of us, most of you guys are students, so you get these exams. If you had an exam here at Biola and the question said, can you earn your salvation or not, true or false? My bet is that most of you would get that right. That the work is already done, and that in fact we can't earn our own salvation. And yet, oftentimes in my work career, I worked as if I needed to earn my own salvation. I actually, for a while, had the verse from Luke printed out that effectively says, to whom much is given, much is expected, and if you don't deliver, you're going to be beaten with many blows. That was to keep me off of ESPN.com, right? And it partially worked. Depends if it's college basketball season or not. But that became this thing for me. And it was as if I needed to earn money because God needed my money. God needed my financial success. And it became this really bad theology that really started to erode the impact that I could have in the marketplace. I found myself getting really stressed out, kind of short with other people. Ultimately, my identity had become this entrepreneur that was really, really successful. And I lost this concept of having been adopted as a son. And there's nothing I could do to earn my salvation. The work was already done. And I missed this incredible opportunity to work, have a sense of gratitude. I missed it completely. And so my mission over the course of the last 5 years, as we've run this venture capital fund, is to help high-performing entrepreneurs to understand that one fact. There's a God who loves us. We've been adopted as sons, and nothing can take that away. We could miss earnings reports. We could fail. We could land Google and then lose Google. We could never have landed Google. We could have all of our employees walk out. God still loves us. And helping them to understand what it looks like to really 100% receive that. Most entrepreneurs are givers at some level. But a lot of times they'll give without having really received it. And I see this through the companies that we work with. And I saw it in my past life as an entrepreneur. One of the best role models for this has actually become with time my business partner and best friend, David Morgan. So we power the Google Voice network, as I told you before. If our network goes down, Google Voice goes down. That's a bad thing. But interestingly, it's in times like that that David is able to respond with a sense of urgency, because it's important, but without anxiety. Because his primary identity is not as the CEO of Bandwidth.com, and he knows it at the spiritual level. His primary identity is a beloved child of God. Another way that I've come to understand this is that I saw this pattern in a lot of our entrepreneurs, a lot of these very high-performing Christians, and I'd spend time with them and I'd talk to them. Twice a year we sit down with our portfolio and we go through a spiritual integration plan and we talk to them about how are they doing in their discipleship. How do they think about the biblical message of generosity? You know, we hit it, we nail it, we get a $100 million exit, $1 billion exit. What does that mean? What are the ministries they want to support? How do they think about their financial finish line? Things like that. We talk about how they then in turn love back on the business community that they're at. We invest in all over the world. So how do they love on the Christian business community in Jakarta or in Austin, Texas, and different things like that. But we also talk about this concept of identity. So we do this, and to be clear, 90% of what I do with them is talk about intellectual property and channels, market and CAC and LTV and all those things. Twice a year we do that. But it was really experience that God worked in my life over the course of the last year that really helped me to unpack this thing called identity. So I had the great honor of doing a number of different speaking events. And I was this guy that together with David built this company, bootstrapped from 0 to 250 million. And that I'd go around and talk about that and encourage other people. It gave me a platform to be a venture capitalist, gave me a platform to have incredible meetings with secular leaders of industry in Silicon Valley and all those things. And my son, my oldest son, came down with a terrible mental illness. He had extreme OCD for 9 months. We had to take him out of school. He was on suicide watch. I could not travel anywhere. In fact, I had to stay at the Starbucks near campus because at any minute, and it happened often, not often, but it happened 9, 10 times, where I'd be called to in an emergency situation up to campus. I couldn't even go to Palo Alto for a meeting. Palo Alto was only 20 minutes away. That happened for 9 months. It was really interesting because for this period of time up until then, I was going around talking to entrepreneurs about what their identity was. And yet I found that I was just a complete wreck. And it wasn't just because my oldest son was going through this very, very difficult time that through the grace of God is now in our rearview mirror. But it was because my identity was being that cool venture capitalist guy or the Christian that be invited to these different types of circles. And when that was all completely removed, when I couldn't be kind of the breadwinner among my partners at Sovereign's Capital, when I wasn't able to take lead on deal flow anymore, I couldn't go out and meet with LPs. I had to rely on them. I realized that how much of my identity wasn't yet as a child of God, even though I was preaching on it. And so God had this beautiful time in my life where it helped me to understand that. And so my question, my hope, my encouragement to all of you is that in your quiet time, you'll endeavor to understand what truly is your identity. You are all successful or you wouldn't be here. Your family's proud that you got into Biola. Your family's proud that you're getting an advanced degree in business. The world will look at you and understand that you have succeeded and are succeeding. What line are you going to believe? Be vigilant from somebody who had some success from the world. It can be toxic and it can be corrosive. But if you embrace it and you see God at work and you have the right thinking of yourself and you get a chance to take all the gifting and experience and opportunity that Biola gives you and you then return it to God in terms of worship, you'll enjoy it. You'll find peace in it. So you've all understand Matthew 6:33 and the lesson that's in that, right? Which is aim first for the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and then you'll get happiness and all these other things you're looking for happiness from. It's so incredibly true. And the other thing, of course, is that as you go ahead and you realize you've been given this incredible gift and you respond in gratitude, you'll find infinitely more joy in work. Your work will be better. You will have a superpower, literally, figuratively, working. You're going to have a much better chance to witness about your faith. You're going to have a much better chance of being able to lead your family well. When you realize that God actually doesn't need you to be successful. He took 2 loaves and 5 fish, 5 loaves, 2 fish, and fed 5,000. So he doesn't need the money you're going to earn. For a long time, I actually looked at it and said, if I make all this money, I can give it all away. God doesn't need that. God just wants your heart. So that's the one lesson. Now, many of you came to Biola, you already knew that. But it took me 30 years to really figure that out and unpack it. So I hope that some aspect of that is an encouragement to you. And I'd love to take some Q&A. We can talk about anything. Ask questions about absolutely anything.
All right, so I'll get started with a couple of questions, and then we'll open it up to the students and to others. So I'm going to take you back a little bit. So your first company, not the one with the T-shirts, but the next one. Yeah. So you were in New York. How did you make the decision that you were going to go from employee to starting something?
Yeah.
What was the decision there?
So it was probably 7 years removed from when I had been an entrepreneur before, and I knew that I felt most alive when I was an entrepreneur. I found that it was hard for me to work for other people, and I wanted that feeling again of the way I felt like when I had T-shirts. So any good entrepreneur will do some simple things. They'll look to go ahead and solve a problem that's in the market. So I found a problem in the market, and it was big enough. So as an investor, I'll tell you what we look for, because this is what I did first at Chapel Brokers. You want to understand the problem the entrepreneur is trying to solve. You then want to find out, is it a problem worth caring about? Is it a big enough problem? Okay, is it a big enough problem for us to finance? That may not need to be the rubric that you go through as an entrepreneur, but we look at it and say, is it a big enough problem? Then this is the big one. what makes you uniquely situated to solve the problem or qualified to solve the problem? Then who else is trying to solve the problem? A lot of times we'll see entrepreneurs say, we're the only people doing this. There are always other people that are trying to solve the problem. And then lastly, how are you going to solve the problem? So in my instance, I found a problem, wanted to solve it. It was interesting. It was big enough to care about, provided an entrepreneurial opportunity. I felt like I was uniquely qualified to solve the problem. And that's how I went about it.
So then you choose David as your partner.
Yes.
Your business partner. So how did you go about choosing business partner? Because that's a key decision point right there.
Yeah.
And God was doing a lot in your life at that time. And sounds like God brought David into your life or your church. Or how did you go about making that decision to go from whether it was business to friend to business, or how did that happen?
That's a great question. By the way, we haven't rehearsed these questions beforehand, but it's a great question. It brings up something really neat. And so the answer is I cold called him. So this is 2000. And if you remember back to 2000, it was all about .coms. It's all about what URL you had. And I didn't have a good URL. As pets.com was like raising $100 million because they had pets.com. It was crazy. And I had bandwidthinternational.com. But I really wanted like broadband.com or bandwidth.com. And so I found bandwidth.com, and hidden on a back sheet was his phone number. And I cold called him. And we spent about 2 hours on the phone together. I found out that he liked mountain biking. And I flew him to North Carolina. We went mountain biking together. The flip side of that is that the day before I called, actually the months leading into that, David had an idea for a business. And he had processed this with his father. And his father said, you know what you should do, David? You should pray for a partner. And so the day before I called him, he spent 2.5 hours under his desk. He really believes in the power of prayer. 2.5 hours under a desk is hard to do, but he did that, and he prayed for a partner, and I called him the next day, which shows that the power of prayer works and that God has a very wicked sense of humor, because all he got was me. And it sounds like false modesty, but you'll meet David and you'll see that he's the much better half. But that's the answer.
So when you start with bandwidth.com, you start to establish a corporate culture, and two important elements were faith and fitness. You must have, with 600 employees. And by the way, thank you for starting a company that provides for 600 families. That's an awesome thing.
They are awesome families to provide for, and they provide for my family.
That's right. Yeah. So you must have people in the bandwidth.com family who they value their family, they value their work. They don't know what to make of this faith thing.
Yeah. And
they're not so cool on the fitness stuff. So when you have, how does that fit with the faith and the fitness and the culture? How do you? Are there people there that we love them and they're really important to this company?
Yeah.
But some of the stuff, it's like they're still coming along. Or how do you work with those two particular, I think, characteristics? The fitness and faith.
So that's a great question. And we have had, to be clear, we've had people that are openly gay in the workplace, that work in the workplace. We have a woman who has a Muslim headscarf, worked in accounts payable for a while. But in those instances, it's loving on them best we can. We know, they know we're Christians. And so it's really important. Everybody's watching. They're trying to figure out how we're going to interact with them. And so, of course, we've got a great biblical example on how to love them. How Jesus loved on the tax collectors and the prostitutes. So how we love on them, that's an easy one to do. Again, we want to compete and win. We don't want to just have necessarily a holy huddle. We want to hire the very best database programmer that is out there. But the reality also is that the word's kind of gotten out. People understand, and even early on, people came to understand who David and I were and wanted to work with us. And the word's gotten out locally, and people understand about the athletic success we've had. So a lot of endurance athletes happen to apply for jobs at Bandwidth. We have a tilted applicant pool. We probably have more believers applying because they understand what we stand for. We also have things like vacation embargo. So if you go on a vacation at Bandwidth, you cannot have, nobody from the company can call you, and you can't call anybody from the company for at least a week. We encourage 2-week vacations to be able to really just pour into your family. And during that time, you cannot do anything work-related. And so people will hear about things like that, and they'll select into our culture. And yet we still find people all the time, and we just try to love them really well. And our chaplains try to love them real well. And through the grace of God, it's always we've never had a problem. Now you get to be a big enough size, and you end up having challenges, but we haven't yet.
So you moved from CEO to chairman.
Yes.
So tell us
then
about
just regular board member now.
And now regular board member.
Yeah.
So tell us about how your role changes. What are the roles those roles entail, and for students, how does that work? These are different roles,
Yeah.
and so I don't know if you and David changed places or how that worked, but what are the different roles? How have you played those out?
So we spent a lot less time thinking about the roles versus just doing what we felt that God wanted us to do. So let me see if I can say that a little bit more clearly. So Dave and I have always been partners. One of us had the chairman role, and one of us had the CEO role. When I felt that God was calling me more into what Sovereigns was going to do, so we saw that there's this problem to solve. There's 3,500 venture capital funds, and not one of them focused on investing in faith-driven entrepreneurs. That was the problem we wanted to solve. We thought it was a big enough problem. We decided that I'd go out and I'd run that, which meant then I transferred from CEO to executive chairman. But it just effectively meant that I was working a little bit more on the ministry side. The most recent transition from a governance perspective is we split the company into two, Bandwidth and then also Republic Wireless. And Bandwidth is going to be going public, Lord willing, in a couple weeks. And I didn't want to be the chairman of the board of a publicly traded company. But David and I are first and foremost brothers in the Lord, and we're best friends. And we encourage each other with where God has us. And so I know enough to be dangerous about what's going on at Bandwidth. The reality is I'm effectively just a cheerleader. And David knows enough about what's going on at Sovereigns Capital, but effectively he's just a cheerleader. But it's always felt incredibly natural. There's never been a kind of like, where do I need to be type of thing.
The next step was becoming evident at each next step then.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's always a very natural progression. The other thing this is not a question you asked, but until recently, people would say, I'm really serious about my Christian faith. I'm thinking about going into partnership with somebody who is not a believer. Is that okay? And I would typically go ahead and extend what I had said before, which is get the best person for the job. If they're not a believer, it'd be great if they're a believer. In my practice, it's been awesome to be able to pray with people. Pray with my partner. But if you would like to go that way, that's fine. And then, of course, I came across the passage in Hebrews, which talks about being equally yoked, and I've completely changed my opinion on that. Partnership is a beautiful, wonderful thing. And we'd have nothing. We'd have zero without our partnership. I've been blessed with 3 amazing business partners. And I'd still be selling T-shirts on college campuses. That's what I would be doing if I didn't have a great partner. And selling T-shirts is awesome, but I'd be nothing without my life partner, my wife, and without Tom first, then David, and now my partner in Sovereigns, a guy named Luke Roush. Be lost without him.
Great. What questions do you have, students? Maybe. Yes.
Please.
So, given your passion for entrepreneurship and that 7-year gap, would you say that the experience you got there positioned you to be a good entrepreneur because it gained you some credibility in the eyes of the market? And would that be a good strategic move for someone who wants to be an entrepreneur to make?
Oh, yes. I was wondering what 7 year, because we've been doing Sovereigns about 7 years. But yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. When I went and worked on Wall Street before I did, yes, the question was, as you shared your story, you talked about this 7-year gap in which you weren't an entrepreneur. I worked at Merrill Lynch, and I worked at Arthur Andersen, I worked at some other places like that. And is that something you'd recommend? Was that formative? Is that the way you would do it? And so in my experience, it was. So I was able to develop an expertise during the last year before I became an entrepreneur in the world of electricity derivative trading. I was able to take that experience and then launch a business on it. The fact that I had relevant business experience and knew the players in the space helped a lot. Question is, did I need that other 6 years of experience before then? And I don't know. Clearly, I was probably some more mature in some ways. But we all know the stories of great entrepreneurs that come right out of undergrad or drop out of undergrad to start a business, right? Some of the most successful ones have done that. So in my instance, it did help, particularly that 1 year of very relevant experience. Interestingly, though, for Chaplaincy brokers, I wasn't able to get any startup funding at all. I had to max out all my credit cards. I thought as the head of a desk that I'd be able to do these things. There's a litany of reasons why I didn't get funding. But if you're looking for venture funding, having relevant work experience is really important. But let me tell you this as a venture capitalist. If you're an entrepreneur, I would delay the venture capital conversation as long as possible. The best experience you can have is running your own business without feeling any type of external pressure from other stakeholders that are looking for an exit event in 5 or 6 years. When you're an entrepreneur and you're raising the money, 5 or 6 years feels like forever down the road. But don't hear from me because I'm a venture capitalist now that pursuing venture capital is the highest and best use of your time. I think it can be very effective. It'd be very helpful to get outside funding. But don't fall into that trap that I'm not worth anything in my entrepreneurial experience if I don't have venture financing. Almost the contrary in some situations. Did I answer your question at all? Mm-hmm. I can't even remember what it was. Yes, thank you for that. Yeah.
All right, others. Yes.
I'm curious about your decision to go public. Are you concerned about that affecting your company culture?
Great question. And the question again was about going public. Are you worried that going public is going to impact your corporate culture? Everything I have ever done entrepreneurially has been filled with some level of naivete and some level of hubris. Going public may be yet another example of that. But both David and I don't see that compromising our culture at all. In fact, we're really excited about what it will look like for a company that's gone from bootstrap to public to being able to have God very much at the center of our culture. You can take some of the most secular companies in America. American Express. Woman in the legal department was subversively behind, not telling anybody about it, was subversive, it's the wrong word, but not public about it, was having a prayer group in the American Express lunchroom once a week. Some Christians she had found were putting together this group. And it got big enough, and she worked in the legal department. She was middle-level manager. She was worried about it enough. She went to her boss and said, "Can I do this here?" And the boss said, "There's nothing about us being a publicly traded company, American Express, that precludes you from doing that." So absolutely do that. So then all of a sudden, the Christian prayer group got to be more than 100. Then American Express came to her and the group and said, "Look, I know you guys are getting together once a week. Would you mind being a Christian focus group about the new products and services we're thinking about rolling out, about how the Christian community might view these different things we're doing?" And she said, "Absolutely." So she's been able to be a blessing to her company. I think it is a great myth that being a publicly traded company means that you can't be serious about why you do what you do. Now, check on me in another year, right?
Right.
Yeah, watch the news thing. But we very much, and Donnie Smith at Tyson's Food, publicly traded company, very serious about his Christian faith and how it impacts culture. I think it is a myth that you cannot be very serious about your corporate, about your culture and wanting to love on people in a way that points to something greater than the manufacture and distribution of widgets. I don't think anything about being a publicly traded company prevents you from doing that. And we'll find, and again, naivete and hubris, right? Yes. Please.
Can you describe the chaplaincy program and if you had requests for other faiths, for other faith chaplains?
Yes. So we have never had a request. The question is, can you talk a little bit about chaplaincy and have you had the request for other faiths? We have never had the request for other faiths. We had differing views about how we'd respond to it. I would like to think that, here's what I can say. I believe that truth stands out in the marketplace of ideas. I think that if a number of Muslims came to me and said, we want to get together and just, and maybe do daily prayer together, are you okay with that? That we'd say yes. I'm sure we'd say yes. Some amount of question has come theoretically about, if a Muslim, can we have a Muslim cleric coming in? And we haven't answered that in a way that I can tell you exactly what we do. We've never been asked it, so I don't know. But we'd have some really serious prayer and fasting time and really look to hear from the Lord one way or another on that. We may be informed by the fact that we don't want another faith system espoused in our workforce, and we may also be informed by the fact that we believe that truth stands out in the marketplace of ideas. I don't know where we'd go, but I would hope that God would speak very clearly to us, and it would surely be with lots of prayer.
Yes, right here.
You've had success as a business owner, and now you have a venture capital group that invests in B2C and B2B. I did not hear the word philanthropy, and I'd like for you to expand on what it is that you're doing in regards to philanthropy, besides loving on your employees.
Yeah.
But is a donor advised fund in the works, or possibly?
So I love the fact that you asked that question. So I was 28 when I came to faith. At 38, I had my born again moment. When a guy's become one of my best friends, Daryl Heald, I came across his radar. I ran a ministry called Generous Giving. And he said, and we were funding Durham Cares and Ministry Spotlight and some other things. And he said, so I get that you're trying to help people understand how and where to give, but Henry, why do you give? And that simple question sent me reeling. And it was really where in my Bible time for like the next 6 months, it seemed like every passage had something to do with money. And that's where I shared the 5 loaves and 2 fish things with you. The passage on generosity that impacted me the most was Jesus taking 5 loaves and 2 fish and feeding 5,000, which most people would not think is a passage about money. But I believe that God needed me. And when I came to understand that he just wanted my heart, it helped me to understand that money had a real hold on my heart. Up until that point in time, Kimberly and I were giving about 20% of our income away and felt that there was a special place in heaven for the double tither. Right? You get box seats to Angels games or something like that. And it really was going back to Scripture and understanding that God owns it all that really set me on a new trajectory for my faith. So with philanthropy at Bandwidth, so for personal philanthropy, I believe that God owns it all. The ministries that I enjoy giving to the most are those that help people understand the biblical message of generosity. And I love doing that. There's a great one called Generosity Path. There's Generous Church. There's Generous Giving, or a bunch that are focused on philanthropy and the biblical message of generosity. I love that. Within the context of Bandwidth, if you're asking about generosity within the context of Bandwidth, we try to be remarkably generous. David and I do not do our philanthropy through Bandwidth, but instead we try to promote a culture of philanthropy that's grassroots. So we give, and I like to think generously, and we do that with ideas that our employees come up with. And we have something called Bandwidth Cares, and we did, I guess last year we probably had 7 or 8 different philanthropic community service projects, and we felt all good about ourselves. We had t-shirts and stuff like that. But the story that I love the most within this context is an investment we made in a company called Cloudfactory. Cloudfactory is a brilliant Oracle guy, Sun Microsystems guy, who felt a calling to go to Kathmandu, Nepal to teach folks how to do Ruby on Rails development. And while he was there, he came to understand there's a great business model around the intersection of the emergence of computer access and internet among the working poor in Nepal. So he created this company called Cloudfactory, which employs thousands of people now. And a part of what they do is they have these groups that get together, kind of like what you see in microfinance, these solidarity groups of workers that get together. They're stack ranked based on the quantity and quality of work they do. And then they're encouraged to have a corporate or a community service project. So in the year before the earthquake, they did 1,000. We did 7 or 8 at Bandwidth. Everybody does community service in America. But nobody had ever done it in Nepal, and they were doing 1,000 plus each year. Earthquake happens, first responders are the Cloudfactory employees. They already had the permission from all these different groups, Buddhists and Hindus alike, to go into the community and clean them up, and it was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing. Nepal, a country closed to the gospel, Christian-led company with chaplaincy, made all that stuff, earning major favor from loving on the Nepalese people in a way that was incredibly philanthropic and generous. And it's their story that I'm proudest to just know about. And it's not because we encouraged them to be that way. It was Mark and the calling that God had. But yes, we have a great opportunity to be generous on our personal platform and on our professional platform.
So Praxis Praxis Labs recently has kind of been introducing this idea of redemptive entrepreneurship, this concept, which I think has a lot of legs. I think it's deep and can go quite a ways to describe what the Christian entrepreneur, those that are really following Jesus into entrepreneurship or in business can do in a redemptive way. How did you're on the board of Praxis, you're involved with Praxis. How did you get to know them? And tell everyone a little bit about Praxis and what they do. We're so thrilled to be hosts of the Praxis Academy and have the students here at Biola in the summer.
So Praxis is this great organization I met through one of the co-founders, Josh Kwan, who is the philanthropic advisor, talking about philanthropy, to a guy named David Weekley. He's one of the largest home builders in America. And we were just riffing on different forms of giving and philanthropy, and he knew that I had an interest in entrepreneurship. And he and this guy named Dave Blanchard came up with an idea to have an accelerator for the very best faith-driven entrepreneurs. And they have one that's focused on for-profit entrepreneurs, and one that's focused on social entrepreneurs. And then they also, of course, have the Praxis Academy. And it's really led out of this great inspiration from the Clapham sect. Group of guys and gals got together in 1840s England who saw all the things that were going wrong with London and decided that they might be used by God to start setting some things straight. And they did things to include working on school training to the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, and of course the abolitionist movement came out of it. William Wilberforce, one of their members, is best known for the abolition part. But they started something like 200 different redemptive businesses. It's amazing, the breadth and the scale and the scope that this Christian community did. So Dave and Josh, out of inspiration for this great lesson, had decided to create Praxis, and it's just a great joy to be involved with them. I don't know if you've been watching the press at all, but there's this great quote from Tom Hanks talking about, go back and read history. You want to know what's going on in the world today? And I don't know that I agree with all things that Tom Hanks would say on the political spectrum, but he gives a very, very good admonition for us all to look at history. I've gotten really geeked out recently on David McCullough's history books and the history talks that he gives at commencements. I highly recommend his work. You guys are probably already there. I'm the last person in America to start reading David McCullough. I know that. But what I'd encourage you to do is to find Christian heroes. John Piper's got this series that's called Men of Whom the World Is Not Worthy. And it's kind of like a Christian A&E biography, and they're awesome. But you find Clapham sect inspiring Praxis. And then another one I think is great inspiration for a group of guys that I get together with are the Inklings. C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien getting together, encouraging each other in pursuit of faith, family, and vocation, faithfully getting together for 20 years. And the stuff that came out of that group is amazing. So, sorry, a little mini riff on history.
That's great. Good. Yes, one last question.
You talked about how you make decisions with prayer and fasting. I wonder if you could give us maybe an inspirational story of something that was a struggle that you really prayed and fasted into and how the Lord came through that.
Oh gosh, there are so many different ones. I'm going to partially answer the question. First, for those of you who don't know what fasting is, I didn't know what fasting was. I saw David fast for a long, long time and I didn't get it. And I remember telling him one day, I can't wait till I get home for dinner. The sun's going to be down and I'm going to be able to eat dinner. And he looked at me and said, are you Muslim? I'm like, what? No, I'm not Muslim. It's like, no, Muslims break their fast at night. You break your fast in the morning. I'm like, why? He's like, well, think about breakfast. And for 2 years I've been fasting and I'd forgotten about you break your fast in the morning. Lots of times that I've seen different types of breakthroughs on different decisions I made. I no longer make a decision without praying and fasting about it. And praying and fasting about Sovereign's Capital, whether to start that up and feeling guided that. There's been no time where there's been incredible miracles, but I'll tell you that when I fast, I don't feel any closer to God. I just feel really, really, really hungry. But in the days that follow, I do. And I get a sense of clarity and mission and purpose. And I feel that I've never been led wrong. And so that's the context I use. The other thing, though, we did not pray and fast about the decision to raise money. We'd pray before each meeting that we went into that we'd come out with a $20 million term sheet. In retrospect, we were being very willful. That's another thing that I riff on, another thing about the difference between being willful and being faithful. Great examples in the Bible, right? Saul didn't wait on Samuel. He's being willful. Gideon did. It worked out well for him. You can be willful in activity like that, like Saul did. You can be willful in passivity. David, all the kings are going off to war. So we try to pray and fast to help us to make sure that we're being faithful rather than willful.
Biola University prepares Christians to think biblically about everything, from science to business to education and the arts. Learn more at biola.edu.